Welcome to everybody who've joined us here for this session of Nice Aarohana. I'm going to just start my screen again. I welcome you all once again. Before we begin the session, I'd like you to go through certain housekeeping tips. All of the participants have been muted in this webinar format. There will be time for Q&A at the end of the session. We'll have roughly about 20 to 30 minutes for Q&A. Please type your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Make it very specific and also address the speaker that you'd like to ask your question to. We'll also enable further interactions with the speaker outside the session, so you can write with your questions, your queries to aarohana@niceorg.in. The certificate for participation will be issued at the end of the 3 months, that is in January, and you need to attend at least 75% of the sessions to be eligible. You can visit the website niceorg.in for more details about NICE or Aarohana. The session is also being streamed live on Facebook, so please feel free to ask your family and friends to log in there. To stay updated with the sessions, the speakers, or catch up on the missed sessions, join our LinkedIn group. The link is provided, and the name for the group is Nice Aarohana. After a few days from today's session, this will also be uploaded on YouTube for you to catch up again. And going forward, I'd like to introduce the speakers. So we have two very eminent creative entrepreneurs themselves, Ayush Kasliwal, who's the founder and designer of AKFD Studio and Decor. Ayush has a presence in India and also in the US. He's been collaborating with a lot of international artists himself. And Vivek Prabhakar, who's the founder and CEO of Chumbak, a brand that is now present across 75 cities in India. So I am really excited to this conversation with both of them. And I'd like to begin by welcoming my speakers. Welcome Ayush, welcome Vivek. We are glad to have you here with us. We've been having conversations around home decor, around creative entrepreneurship in the past, and I'd like to take this forward by knowing your perspectives coming from a background, which is very core to this space in itself. And Ayush, I'd like to begin with you. You come from a family of creative entrepreneurs. You've been raised in a family of just been having a tradition of over 100 years, 150 years. How has your entrepreneurial journey with crafts been like, with your studying of design, the family background, and how do you see crafts as an entrepreneurial opportunity?
So my dad is actually a doctor and my mom is a school teacher. So while the overall family business has been steeped in craft and it's one of Jaipur's oldest and best-known jewelry companies, the Jai Palace. The thing is that we talk culture, we appreciate culture, we like nice things, and there's this thing about you hold something which has integrity and you feel good about it. It's not really a sense that you can communicate with words, but you know it. You know when something is nice, and I think that is really what my background with my family gave me, is an exposure to beautiful objects and to see things that are beautiful that would otherwise go unnoticed. And being jewelers, that is really what our family has been doing, is make the finest jewelry. And jewelry is a very ephemeral thing. It's not something that is functional or like that. So appreciating things for the beauty of them is something that I got from a family background. But also deep appreciation for the makers, because when you make jewelry, you don't always specify everything. When you design jewelry, a lot of it is done by the innovation of the maker. And I think this deep respect for the maker is also one thing which I kind of experienced since a child. And likewise, know when something is made well. My background in design is from NIT. I studied design. I might have been a doctor by whatever, but to this thing of holding things that are beautiful and imagining is something that I was really caught up by. So when I was a kid, I'd go to our family store and we'd play with jewelry, like it's milk, whatever. So I think this world of imagination is really what took me up and got me into design. But craft is what has kept me there, because I enjoy seeing things made well, well crafted.
Right. And when you say about the experience and about innovation, what is being made by the artisans, what is it that you try to convey through your enterprise? You know, how is it that this experience that you have personally felt through as a kid raising up, even though, you know, furnishing is quite different from jewelry, but I'm sure that the experience of feeling arts and crafts heritage is something which is very common. So, what is it that you seek to convey through your enterprise?
So, the thing is that crafts and culture are very closely connected to each other. And that chasm has become bigger and bigger, where consumers or cultures we see has moved on, but crafts has not caught up. A lot of crafts people are still trying to make elaborate, products, which a consumer would come and say, "Oh God, I don't have any stuff. How am I going to clean it up?" Right? So this chasm between, craft and culture is what we try and bridge with design, is make products or design products that are relevant for today, in terms of use, in terms of form, in terms of simple functionality. Also, can we talk about the issues that are relevant today? Can we incorporate technology with craft? And the thing is that crafts are not something which happen in one village in Jharkhand. Crafts happen everywhere. They happen all around us. So to celebrate the act of making is really what our brand is about, and connecting it to us as a people. What shapes are Indian, what form is Indian, what function is Indian. So for us, crafts and culture are two sides of the same coin. They both survive with each other. And that is what Anantya is about. Anantya is one of the enterprises that I head. The other one is AKFE, which takes crafts to a very different level, where it is about more about design and things that are just made well. Our furniture has integrity to it. They are just well made. They do not break apart. They're comfortable. They work. And I think that's what a lot of our crafts people are capable of. As a child, you might have seen craft carpenters coming to your home and making things for you. Well, that's craft. You have bricklayers who are laying bricks one over the other perfectly to make a straight wall. That is craft. So these are all crafts that are around us, and that is really what the brand AKP is about.
Right, right, right. I'd like to take some of what you said to Vivek about technology, about integrity, and certain values that design also reflects. Vivek, what is it that you were thinking when you made a shift from a corporate world to creating a brand that represents India in a fun and a quirky manner? You know, a lot of the Gen Z can relate to. So, what is it that your design language seek to communicate through it?
I think, in the beginning when we did start out and the idea for Chumbak was there, we've gone through actually two or three different types of visual design changes over the last 10 years that we've been around. And when we first started out Chumbak, the idea was very clear. Listen, that there are very few products or, accessories or souvenirs in the market that represent India the way that you and I see it today. And for the life of us, we couldn't figure out why that was the reason. A lot of the country was being represented by the pashmina shawl or the small tiny marble Taj Mahal or something like that. And I think those were the souvenirs. I think maybe even Genghis Khan took back 400 years ago when he came to India. But I think what we decided was that I think we need to upgrade the entire vision of what souvenirs was. And that was the original kind of direction that we took, saying that let's represent it in the way that you and I see it, and it represents that. So now there are auto rickshaws around, there's a yogi guy around, there are cows around, there are a little bit of cliched in that sense India, but India that everybody sees and knows and smells and hears every day around them. And while that was the original idea, we did that for a couple of years, maybe about almost 3-4 years we did that. uh, and that's when we started the transition, saying that okay, hey, design is something that we love. Our consumers also growing up, and the kind of markets also maturing, the kind of distribution is maturing, and that's when we started to kind of slowly, about 6-7 years ago, modeling ourselves to become a lifestyle brand that we are today. But at the core of it all has been the entire you know visual language and that design structure that we followed from day one.
Right, right, right. So we've seen Chumbak as a customer, as a consumer, maintain a certain core design language that we see across different products, and we
Sure.
can identify what a Chumbak product is. How has the journey of if this design language evolved at your end? Is it something that you decided this is what we're going to stick to right from the beginning to the end? Or do you see there is constant evolution in this?
So I think for us, design and the evolution, I mean, the evolution of design is a completely like it's a living, breathing kind of animal, in the way we look at it. In the first couple of years, it was very India themed, so as to speak, and as I said, an auto rickshaw or a cow or something like that, and very cliched in that sense. One of the biggest things that we realized after about a year or two is when consumers came back to us and were buying stuff from us, they would constantly come back and say, hey, listen, you know what's new at Chumbak? And they weren't typically pretty much getting accustomed to saying that what is new in this particular category or that particular category, but a brand as a whole. And the second kind of epiphany that we had was that when consumers were coming to us, they would give you 1,000 rupees, and invariably, what was happening, we'd give them 500 rupees back in change. And very clearly, from a brand perspective, we were here, but consumers were over here. And the only way was not to do this, but to really go up in that sense from a brand perspective. And that meant actually, maturing your design language. So one of the first categories that we took up was home. And while you can do fun fridge magnets and fun keychains with a little cartoony kind of illustration, it won't work on a dinner plate or a cushion or a rug or a lamp or something like that. And that's when we kind of moved to what was known internally, we called it from an India themed to an India inspired. So a little bits of India popped in here and there. And then when we took the final step of getting into fashion, that's when we realized, listen, while India is a great theme to work with and subject matter work with, why are we trying to force fit it everywhere else? You may not want it on your dress, you may not want it on shoes or a bag. So we decided that, listen, design is actually what we're good at. If it requires India, great. If it requires something global, great. If it requires a fusion of both, great. So what we kind of over a period of 5-6 years kind of started working what is design, design language. And that's what research constantly tells us, that while internally we can see the difference between a Chumbak 2010 versus a 2015 versus a 2018 and 2020, consumers say, hey, listen, we can spot Chumbak a mile away, even without knowing, seeing the logo or the brand like that. And that's actually credit to the entire design studio that's been able to actually work this. So the entire team sitting there has been able to kind of evolve with consumers, evolve with distribution, evolve with the kind of stores that you have, and evolve with the times, such that we are changing day after day. So design is something that I keep telling people, it's like this living, breathing creature that's within us, and it's not constantly a similar kind of a visual language that we work with.
Right, right, right. That's quite interesting about how you talk about evolving design languages. And when you mention about, different design for different products, Ayush, I'd like to ask you different design for different spaces, in the sense that your products are not just adorning homes. We see them when somebody lands right at the T3 airport in Delhi. That's the touch base for somebody coming from across the world with India. And they see the magnificent hand gestures. What is it that you seek to convey about India to a global audience, when we talk about brand India or something? How does your design language convey that globally?
So, my personal thought is that I don't think we can reduce India to a design language. India,
Ayush, I'm so sorry to cut you. Can you be a little louder? Your voice is a little feeble.
so, I don't think we can reduce India to a design language per se. We are too big a country. We're too many a people. And I think there is something else that connects all of us, which is much deeper. And, I think that is really what India is about. When you talk about yoga, when you talk about Ayurveda, when we talk about, there's so many other things that are deeper. And I think while design does address things at a surface level, if design can address something which is deeper, is really what I think India is about. And that is really what India has to share with the world, that we are not visual, object-oriented people. There's a meaning, there's a depth to us as a country, as a nation. And this is, people often say, okay, this is Japanese looking, this is, Scandinavian looking, what is Indian looking? And, we are many, we are way too many. And we are, India is a distinctly, unique place, because, a design language of Kashmir does not fit the design language of, say, Kerala. It just can't. So what we look at conveying then is something that means something else. So, like for example, we have these little jars which have got a finial on top. Those finials are what we see on top of monuments across the country. So a more, to express India as a single design language would be a mistake, but to express India as a thought might be a different way of looking at it. So when we look at Gandhi, Gandhi has a uniquely Indian philosophy. Khadi is uniquely Indian. Can we celebrate that? It is not because how they look, but because how they are made, because what they represent. And I think this is what all the products, especially at Anantya, do, is they carry a meaning which is deeper. And the objects are sold as part of a story and not the other way around, which I think has worked very well for us when a product fits inside a narrative instead of a narrative fitting into a product. And globally, that is what people have appreciated, that our products are not, they carry a meaning with them, they carry a story with them. And when people share the idea of the product, it's not just, oh, very nice product. People say, okay, this is what it means, what it is inspired by, this is what it does, what the craft people who make it are. So I think those layers become very, very important when we talk about a global audience.
Right, right, right. I just like how you phrased it, about the product fitting into the narrative. And these narratives, as you also mentioned, would diversify across states, from Kashmir to Kerala. And you worked with state governments, you worked with state governments, you worked with international governments. How does the B2G crafts dealing, or an entrepreneurial dealing work? How is it when you're doing a multi-stakeholder management for your enterprise? What's your experience been in that space?
I think the challenge really is enrollment. When people get together, the question is what they get out of it. So to underline and clarify a bigger vision than yourself, or a bigger vision than your enterprise, is the basis of any multi-stakeholder engagement. A government would have different concerns, corporate would have different concerns. So how do we come to a common ground where all our concerns are met, all of us stand to gain, not just monetarily, but just in terms of the vision that we have, is really, in that part is the part that is a challenge, the coming to a common ground. But once you're on a common ground, it works, because everybody puts their 100%, because they know it's for something bigger than themselves. So engagement has been at very many different levels, at consulting, guidance, advice, mostly. We normally refrain from working with the government in a position where we stand to gain a consultancy or we are paid, just because that skews the relationship considerably, and it makes it kind of becomes easy for us to get what we want to get done without getting paid if it's the government. So we just had to kind of play it finally, because enterprise also there's much more to be
Losing
done.
you in between.
So things happen.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. We just lost you in between.
Oh, sorry. Should I?
Yeah.
So the essence is that when you say that an idea is bigger than any, then things start working, and people start putting their 100% when they have a common vision to work towards.
Right. I understand. So it's the vision that drives collaborative projects as well, and that's the challenging part. Vivek, I want to understand from you. What made you convince to your larger audience or your larger consumer about the Chumbak vision when you started out? So how did you identify that this is what we need, this is what needs to go out there in the market?
I
You're on
think
mute.
I think two things to the entire messaging that we did to consumers. One was actually the product, which was quite clutter breaking. I mean, nobody had seen some, even those kind of souvenirs and those kind of accessories those days, 10 years ago in India, and which were well designed, great quality and affordable pricing. So that itself was, when you go to a store or even online and all, the Chumbak product would stand out in its environment in that sense. I think the second part of it is that when we look at the kind of communication that we did with our consumers, and Facebook was its very early days. Instagram hadn't even started as yet. A lot of the communication was around the philosophy of design, of art, of India, of all the other things that we spoke about at that time. Even movies and film and music and food and all of that. It wasn't really around the product, so as to speak. So that the entire, when we kept posting stuff about design, we kept posting stuff about, this is what's happening in the world. This is like the movies that we've watched. And hey, did you like the art in this museum and so on and so forth. I think that early on started a conversation between consumers as us, where we were able to kind of lead the conversation by not being a product company, so as to speak, that manufactures product, but becoming a brand. And there's a very clear difference between the two of, just selling a product and being a brand. I think that very consciously we kind of tracked early on, by having two-way conversations with consumers and building this entire periphery of conversations around us, which were related to Chumbak. So for example, as I said, we talk about a movie one day, we talk on our Facebook accounts, and that brought in a lot of conversation, saying that, hey, I also like this, I also did this, I also did this. And I think that kind of built the kind of foundation for the brand that we are today.
So just for the audience that we have right now, when young entrepreneurs are starting out, how what are some of the trips or tricks, like tricks to identify about going about building a brand versus building a product? How does
Uh,
one do that?
Honestly, it's I mean, I'd love to give you something that you can use and work in today's day and age, but today's day and age of social media is very different from when we started, right? I think one, for example, everything is paid today, so you have to be extremely careful. You have to see where your consumers are. I think the number one advice that I'd give people starting up in this area would be to ensure that you have a product and a market fit, so as to speak. Ensure that you're trying to solve a problem. Ensure that you're trying to exist in a space that maybe nobody else is existing, or a price point that nobody else is existing, or a design language that nobody else is existing. There has to be a kind of mission to why you exist in the first place. If you can answer that question pretty well enough, I don't think the rest of the stuff follows and falls in place. And I think it's extremely important to understand the reason why you're doing what you're doing. I mean, it could be as simple as, hey, I want to make money, which is great. Everybody wants to make money, but state it upfront, saying this is the reason why I want to do. I'm a product company. I don't care about brand. I'm going to make the cheapest product. I'm going to sell it out there, and so on and so forth. Or say, no, I want to create great products in this world. And if I'm creating great products in this world, it's going to take time. I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to do it my way. There will be failure. There will be, stuff that slows me down, but I'm going to go on my vision. So state your intent really early in the game. I think it's important that you do that.
Right. So going back to your experience when you identified that you wanted to build a brand and you decided upon what your intent was, what were the kind of investment opportunities that you were eyeing up for?
In from that we were investing in at that time.
Yeah, or seeking external funding also, did you?
So actually, for the first three, we were self-funded for the first 2.5 years. Actually, before even venturing into any sort of external funding. But all the money that we made in the first 2.5 years just went directly back into growing the product and growing the product range. I mean, there was if we were doing t-shirts at some point in time, and we had say 100,000 rupees with us, and we would figure out, hey, listen, do I take the 100,000 rupees and invest it in 5 new t-shirts, or do I do 20 magnets and keychains? It was like a weighing in of what to invest in. And that happens when you have, no capital and you're doing things yourself, which is a great thing, because I think somewhere you're pressurized to kind of choose, numbers and business far before personal beliefs and personal thoughts and design and stuff like that. So I think in that sense, our investments were directly back into product. We didn't put any money into brand. As I said, Facebook in those days was cheap, was inexpensive, and almost free. And we built the brand on social via conversation. So we didn't have to actually invest in anything else at that point, except more product that we needed to sell.
Right, right, right. And when you were seeking funding from external sources,
The biggest thing why we went and when actually a couple of people started approaching us, and when we said, okay, hey, this is something, it's time to do it, the number one reason was actually saying that I don't want to solve this problem of t-shirt versus magnet keychain. I want to do both, because I believe that I can do both and manage both. The second reason was obviously, I think, to growing distribution. One of our biggest problems at that time was, for example, if someone went into Crosswords, where we used to retail out of in the early days, would not find our t-shirts because they're a stationery company, or would go into another, mom and pop store and would not find stationery because they only sold apparel. So a lot of feedback, again, which putting our ears to the ground, we heard was, I can't find all of Chumbak at one place. And that was our key number one takeaway, saying that, okay, we need to have, and that's why we started our small kiosks that we started back in the day. We had close to about 40 kiosks that we did for about 2-3 years. And that was to say, hey, listen, everybody come into Chumbak now. There's a location that you can come in and not just online.
Right.
So that was our biggest need to go into our first Series A that we did in 2012-13.
Right, right, right. That's quite interesting, the journey from mom and pop to exclusive retails, and then now venturing into e-commerce. Let me ask this question to Ayush. You have a global clientele as well. At what stage, first of all, did you decide to go global? What were the challenges that you faced at that time? And also, I'd like to understand, how does your supply mechanism work? How does the inventory stock management work when you're catering to a global audience? Is it an on-demand supply, or do you always maintain a consistent inventory for your products in India across the global markets?
So I was actually exporting products when I was still studying. So my start happened in exports happened very, very early. And some of my first clients were all around the world. What we've been, so we work in the world of furniture, which is big product, where maintaining inventory is not just expensive, it is also very space occupying. In the furniture world, we just say that we are actually not in the business of furniture, we're in the business of real estate, because of the space it takes up. So what we've done is that Anantya, the products at Anantya are ex-stock. Those are the ones we stock. And we build inventory based on a basic, start off with a gut instinct that, okay, I should
Ayush, I'm
probably
so
make
sorry to
100
cut
this,
you again, but the
how
voice
it
is
works.
yeah,
And then as we
the
start
voice is very choppy at my end. Can't hear it.
is it better?
Much better, yeah.
Is the voice okay now?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So for Anantya, we've been stocking the products and we see how the market is responding to it, and build products accordingly. Also, because the nature of our business is very craft driven. I need to fill in capacities when they are open, or when, like, if an artisan comes and says that I need work, well, we design a product or we give them orders around that. So part of having your own business is that you can have the luxury of building up as per what you want to get done. And because we sell mostly through our own stores, we are able to push the product that we are able to that are that we have an inventory of. So it's not one clear defined mechanism. This is how we work. A lot of it is still gut driven. Our scale of operation is not massive. It's still large enough. Our furniture is normally made only on demand. And in the in when we're shipping overseas, because shipping small quantities is expensive, most of our clients tend to buy a larger quantity of the product just for logistics sake. So, and obviously that we make only to demand, and we ask for a 3-month lead time, and we normally get it as well. So we have both the models that work simultaneously. In furniture, also we are seeing that there's some products that sell more and better and faster, and because a lot of our cost is done on bespoke manufacturing. So if I manufacture a single chair, it might be 3 times the cost of what it will cost me when I do it in production and keep it in stock. So now that we started selling online, we are getting the numbers that will, probably in about a year or so time, tell us what to build an inventory of.
Right,
So
right,
both.
right. So just want to also understand, as both if you've been working at a decent large scale, I wouldn't say it's a very small scale. It's a decently large scale. Both of you also have an e-commerce presence now. Do you see the shift from retail to e-commerce happening in the home decor and furnishing space more, in the sense that if somebody has to start their venture, should they first present themselves online and then go offline, or should they go offline and then present themselves online? Ayush, I'd like to begin with you. Yeah.
I, so I think it's a simultaneous thing that is required because many things still need to be experienced. The not good thing about e-com is that your feedbacks are, you really cannot rely on any feedback. And just because somebody does not buy does not mean that the product is not great. It might mean the photographs are bad. So to have a place where you can interact with customers is very important in the beginning. That's what I feel. Subsequently having a e-com and a physical site also fine, or perhaps even only e-com, even that works. But key to a physical space is how do you listen to your customer? How do you engage with them? Because very often customers are the ones who tell you what to make, or what is working or what is not working. So both these things have a distinctly different, function. But sales definitely, e-com is a very good place because your reach is then global. You're not restricted by geography.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'd like to ask Vivek the same question, because the Chumbak model was offline first and then went online at a later stage. And now we see a lot of digital presence as well. So what is your approach towards it, Vivek? For the younger entrepreneurs who made, especially for products, as Ayush mentioned, which may not require such a big inventory space,
Sure, sure. So actually, we've been online from day one. So we've had our website, and for the last maybe till about 2016, 17, online contributed a steady 30% of our business. And a lot of it came in from chumbak.com rather from the marketplaces at that time. I think in the last 2-3 years, we've seen marketplaces grow pretty well enough. Today, online is almost, if you take even the pre-COVID kind of number, we're almost about 35-36% of our business comes from online. And of course, obviously, it's accelerated like crazy in the post-COVID world, where almost because of the kind of restrictions in an offline world today, we've seen online close to be almost about 45-50% of our business today. I think from a perspective of what should people do, it all depends on the product, honestly. But I wouldn't, I'd like to agree with Ayush. I wouldn't ignore either. Today, if you have a version of, if you have some money enough to be able to do an offline kind of thing, you would definitely should be able to do a little bit of offline, followed and led by online in that sense, if you have limited money. But if money is completely limited, there is no doubt about it. Online first is the way to go. But obviously taking care of, as Ayush was saying, good photography, good merchandising, good product, and all of that put together, such that consumers are there, and the world is your oyster after that. Today, having one store in, say, Raipur is great, but even the person from a Delhi or a Bombay, nobody can see it. But the same person in Raipur having an online store, he can ship anywhere in the world. So I think there's no denying that online first strategies work, but it would be great to be a little bit of hybrid if you could afford it.
Right. Uh, Somebody who's venturing in the home decor space,
I'd like to mention,
yeah,
I just want to mention one more thing, that the world is not that strict on being online and offline. What we have been seeing is a lot of people see our product online, but they reach out to us offline, in the sense they call us, they talk to us, and we're able to engage with them and enroll them into a product very well when they do that. So that's like an in-between model. It's not strictly online, it's not strictly offline, because people are still communicating with us. And there's somebody in our store on display space who walks around with a camera, shows people the product. And that is also another way of converting a customer without having to actually sell a product online.
right. Uh, when we're talking about, selling, distribution, one question that also comes to my mind is how how much weightage to does consumer feedback matters when you're, gradually building a product? Is it that every time you find a feedback which is relatable, which is relevant, and you'd want to incorporate it, sometimes you have to ignore it? How do you go about, engaging with with the consumer when your product or your brand itself is giving an experience to them, So I'm sure that the validation matters from them, the kind of experiences that they gain out of it. So how do you go about incorporating a customer feedback mechanism into your products?
So, should I start?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So, consumer feedback is very, very important. It's actually super critical to understand what your customer is about. But what we also have to know is that it's not everything. A customer comes from a certain point of view. So understanding the point of view is just as important as understanding the feedback that has actually been given. And so it has to be weighed down very carefully as to how much you incorporate in your world. A simple thing like, okay, this product is very expensive. What does that really mean? It means that they don't see the value in that product. It means that you have to show your value that much better. So I think customer feedback, customer engagement is one thing, because when you get feedback, that means the customer is engaged enough to give you a feedback. So I think if a customer does give feedback, that's great. That's fantastic. A person customer is bothered enough to give you a feedback. And we have to kind of take it very careful job, in the sense that had he asked for customer feedback, the iPad would never have happened, because sometimes an idea is just too new or just too unfamiliar to suit one. Feedback, sometimes we got to wait and back together.
Ayush, I'm so
So
sorry,
Vivek,
we
on to you.
just lost you again for the past few seconds. I don't know if you're able to hear us either.
So I was just saying, I can hear you. I can
Yeah.
hear you. So I was just saying that the successful products, sometimes you take a small customer feedback, you might get negative feedback and say it doesn't work. But at times you just have to go with your gut and see what is it. Probably your storytelling is not right, probably your images are not right. So try every possible avenue about the product, about talking about your product before you give up, or before you change what you're doing. Because sometimes you start off with a great thing and you can lose your way, but customer feedback is very, very important. Whether you incorporate it or not is a separate question.
Right. Vivek, in your experience, how has that worked out? Especially when you say that people come to your stores and ask what is new. That's definitely a positive sign. But how much does it also matter, when there is a presence of Chumbak in a particular city, for example, and not in another city? And when you hear customers that we want Chumbak to come in our city, we want it to be in our neighborhood, what are the considerations that you would make, based on these
So
things? requests?
Sure. I mean, going back to this thing about customer feedback and what were they saying and all of that, while it's extremely amazing that one should listen to consumers all the time and all of that. But I think a lot of the decisions that we take, I mean, in fact, not all, like 95% of the decisions that we take are all data driven. No, so let me take up the example of what you just spoke about, come to my neighborhood and open a store kind of thing. There are like almost 100 touch points in terms of the kind of data that we get while before we open a store, and I'm not including the kind of ROI and the mechanics and all of that, but also, for example, let's say somebody has to open a store in Bangalore and Indranagar, right? How do we open a store in Bangalore and Indranagar? We look at the kind of past, orders that have come there from online. We look at the kind of stores that are available there from that perspective. We look at the kind of, traffic that's been around in that place from a Google perspective. Basis all that, we come to conclusions saying that this thing. So a lot of us is, while we listen to consumers, a lot of our decisions are purely data based.
Right. So going forward, I think data would play a big role.
Already.
It's already
huge role. Yeah.
Right. And investing early on in data, in collecting a customer feedback is something that you both
is extremely, we've been doing it for the last 10 years. And I think if that's one department that we've been doing really well in, is actually in data science at Chumbak.
Right. So then spreadsheets are not all that boring.
Not at all. They're the biggest knowledge and of anything that all your answers are in the numbers.
Absolutely. That's very nicely put. Before I open the floor for audience interaction, there are two things that I'd like to ask. Vivek, I want to, how do you see Chumbak in the next 5 years from now, 5 to 7 years from now?
Actually, if anybody else has an answer, it'll be amazing, because right now we're trying to figure out what's happening in COVID. But I think, seriousness, I think in all seriousness, we see that one of the things that we're experimenting with even during COVID is that setting up, fulfillment centers abroad, such that we're already shipping from the US to the US and Australia to Australia and Germany to Germany. We're trying out a couple of experiments quietly on the side. In fact, 2020 was a year that we were supposed to be opening up a couple of stores internationally. And I think that's been pushed forward. So I think having a bunch of stores internationally, I think, would be a large play that we would be making. And exploring for the longest of time, which will supplement this entire lifestyle kind of, brand that we're building. And looking at, e-commerce in a way that, how can, in some markets, can we go digital first and, be an online player first before actually setting up a store if required. So I think those are the 2-3 things that we're actually working on for the next couple of years.
Right. And Ayush, if I were to ask you, what are the mega trends that you see, which are here to stay in the home decor and furnishing space, that the younger entrepreneurs can tap into as well?
I think one thing which is very clear is home is where the heart is, and home is also where the cash is. People are willing to invest in their homes, in their personal life, in what they use on a regular basis. So the luxury is getting redefined in the sense it's not luxury that is to show, but it is luxury as it is to experience. So I think as a broad trend, this is something which is very distinct, because people are willing to spend on themselves. So people are willing to go on holidays, people are willing to spend on experiences, people are willing to spend on their own homes, on what is personal. So I think that's actually a great trend for us. So I think that is one thing to think and now.
Right. That's very nicely put. And I think this whole pandemic time has made us realize, we're investing more in the home space. I see that trend rising, especially in my circles, and I'm sure for you guys also. All right, so let me just start by the first question. That's from Sandeep. So he asks Vivek, what was the main reason for you to diversify from Slovenia to home? And is it mainly because of a business revenue model or unit of economics that worked for you?
I think many things actually. One was we always wanted to do home and fashion and all of that, but when we started, we chose souvenirs as the easiest thing to get into. I mean, stuff that took the least amount of capital. You have to understand that we were self-funded at that time, and we felt that out of the three categories that we wanted to start, souvenirs seemed the place that you could actually make a difference and kind of break through the clutter far more effectively from a cost perspective. And that's the reason why we chose souvenir first. And the reason to diversify was very clear. Was that, as I said, souvenirs, whatever said and done, are still 200, 300 rupee products. You cannot continue. You have to have millions and millions of products. You have to sell of those to make enough money. So very clearly it was because of the revenue model and of both, which is unit economics as well, saying that, well, the unit economics are positive from day one. What we had to make sure was that, listen, now I need, if consumers are coming in, have bought into brand Chumbak, they've not brought in and said that, hey, I only love your Chumbak keychain or magnet or a t-shirt. I'm ready to buy furniture from you. I'm ready to buy this from you. I'm ready to buy that from you. And that's what we kind of, cultivated over 2-3 years before actually launching home.
Right. Just, I'd like to extend this a little bit to Ayush also. Ayush, you've also extended Anantaya to apparels and fashion and accessories. How has that worked out for you?
It's actually worked out quite well. We are, as an enterprise, we're very craft driven. And a lot of travelers buy our product. So, it's difficult to sell a lamp or a chair or a table to a person who's traveling, but selling a garment is relatively easy. Also, very objectively looking, India has a massive number of weavers and textile, craft. So it was just a natural, I wouldn't even say a transition, but a natural addition to our product line to include apparel and, jewelry and things like that into our brand. So for us, it was,
Right. Um, yeah.
yeah. So I was just saying that
Okay.
for us,
So to start off,
we don't put ourselves in a particular bracket as to what we are or what we sell. We sell, beautifully crafted, well-designed products, and that I think includes everything that we can possibly do.
right. So just, so Namrata asks this question, that at what interval on a time frame basis is it advisable to introduce a new product line? How much time would you want to give to a particular existing product that has been launched, to feed into the consumer's consciousness, let's say it that way?
I mean, if I were to answer
this
it,
is
I just
again
look
a
at
very,
data. I mean,
Yeah, I'm just
I would
sorry.
agree. It's absolutely data driven. It's absolutely data driven. What I would add to it is that when you introduce a product, before you invest in stock or before you invest in inventory, do a check with the client. There's something called there's some door policy or whatever. So put it onto your website as if it were a product that existed. See the number of people who are clicking it. See the number of people who are liking it, and then invest in it. Because I think that's a big mistake that many entrepreneurs do, is they build stock without actually testing it out sufficiently. And also, even when you build up a stock, your call on when to introduce a new product is, when you see the old product tapering off. Sometimes a new product is an extension to the new. Like suppose you introduce a shirt, and a lot of people are saying that, okay, I like this shirt, but can I have it in red? It's a new introduction. So that is again a data-driven, call that you have to take.
Right. Vivek, how do you go about collecting the data for your?
I mean, every single product that we do, I mean, so one, we invested in systems really, really on. So we had an ERP system about almost 6-7 years ago. And at that time, I think both our board and a lot of the team felt that we were over investing. But I think, we see the benefits even today of having done that, because we've been collecting data on every single purchase, every single product that sells. And we've been able to use that to make really amazing decisions that have, helped us. So I think, for us, honestly, data collection is key for this, because a lot of our business decisions get answered by the fact that we have quality data across that we've been collecting from stores and from consumers online as well.
Right, right. So Preeti asks an adjoining question. What are the ways to attract the customers to your website to buy a product? Vivek, if you could tell us
I
a
mean,
little
the
bit about.
product hopefully is good enough that it'll attract consumers. The brand that you built, which are all these are all the organic ways of doing it. And of course, which 99% of companies do today, is the inorganic way, which is through advertising. And advertising on Facebook, advertising on Google, on Instagram, and wherever your consumers are. And typically, even when we did start out advertising maybe about 6 years ago, we would work as with budgets of as low as 500 rupees a day, and try and figure out what would be, where would the consumers go. The best thing about advertising online is that you get immediate instant results. If your ads are working, what's not there. I mean, the kind of data that one can delve deep into and analyze is tremendous. So unlike maybe a newspaper ad or something, you have to wait for someone to look at it, maybe the thing. But if you're doing online kind of advertising to your website, start off, say that, I'm going to start off with a budget of 500 rupees a day. See where that takes you. You'll realize 8 out of your 10 are not working, but those 2 are. Then focus and put another 500. And, we've honestly done this where even today we'll work on, say, we'll work on a 5,000 rupee budget for a particular kind of campaign. I mean, kind of ad that we might do. And, the moment we see, obviously we'll have a lot of failures along the way as well, even today. And, the targeting might not be right. The copy may not be right. The color might not be right. The lighting may not be right in the ad, all of that. But the moment the ones that perform and have started to move up, suddenly out from 5,000, I'll increase it to 50,000. And then you see results working pretty well. And that's the great thing about online, that it's real-time tracking. And if it's not working, switch it off. Don't waste your money there. So that's the way we look at our paid kind of advertising.
Right. So Bhavna asks, how much of your revenue would you want to allocate to digital marketing, or would you just play by the ear?
So for what we do is that we allocate anywhere between 15 to 18% of our net sales revenue from online on digital marketing. So that's a formula, I mean, that works for us, because I mean, it all depends on your margins, your kind of growth that you have, and the kind of product that you're selling and the average price of the product. But we work with around average, say about 15% of net sales value, after paying off tax and returns and what you're left with. That's what we do from a Chumbak perspective.
And Ayush, how does
But in the beginning, Bhavna, you can definitely play by ear.
Ayush, how does it work for you, when you'll have to make sure that your marketing works maybe differently for an Indian audience and differently for a global audience? How would your marketing strategy be like then?
We're not even a fraction as organized as Vivek is. We're kind of happy-go-lucky. We don't have a particular marketing, mode or method as such. A lot of it goes by word of mouth. A lot of it goes by media presence. Just like what we're doing right now is in a way indirect marketing, because we're telling people about our brand, we're speaking about it, and I think this slightly more organic way works well for us. Our spend on digital marketing is fairly recent, and we are very, very conservative about it. But because we still online, we see people coming and seeing it. I personally think the best advertising that we do is relationship.
Yeah.
Personal relationships, people who talk to us, people find us approachable. Because when you talk about furniture, the average price is about 10 to 15,000 rupees. And if somebody comes with a home, their budgets become like 7, 8, 10, 20 lakh rupees. And that is something which digital marketing does not even get to.
Agree.
It is a relationship that gets to, and how you work with them. And are you approachable enough? Can people just pick up the phone and say, hey, I want to get some furniture. What do you think about it? And how you treat them. So, I think that particular aspect is a very crucial part of business. And I know that even today, most large businesses value this relationship very, very deeply. So, the one thing that I'd like to tell to the audience is, do not undervalue the power of relationship, the power of saying hello. I'm there. Do you need any support? Do you need any help?
Yeah.
Just, that which is very, very reassuring, especially for the Indian customer and even for the customer overseas. Your presence as a person is very, very important.
So that means that you'd be spending 6 months here and 6 months traveling around the world then.
6 months on the phone, 6 months off the phone.
Well, hopefully this thing improves post-COVID and soon. Preeti has already asked, and Bhavna asked another question that, what is your take in product extension versus product category, Vivek? Does it make a sense to find a new product when you can easily innovate on an existing product line? So,
I think a product extension versus a product category, a new product category. I think we do a lot of both, honestly. And I think
I'm shutting down. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. My charge is not there.
all right. I
I'll
yeah,
just get my
yeah.
yeah, so I think we do a mix of both, and it's honestly dependent on the kind of product category line that you're doing. One of the things that, as I keep coming back to and sounding like a stuck record, is we look at the data. We look at the numbers and saying that what's going to be actually, when we're actually, we have a system, where uh, because of the kind of data that's there, and we've kind of been learning, the computer's been learning, and it throws out algorithms of, projected sales and projected margins and projected stuff like that. Basis that, we take that into account, and then obviously it's a human intervention and touch and saying that, hey, does this make better sense to do a new category, or does it take the existing category and grow on that in that sense? So sometimes it's a mixture of both. So I mean, it will depend on from brand to brand in that sense. Honestly, I don't have
Right.
one
So
answer for that.
it was just a little digression from the home decor space, but I see that recently you also launched a beauty line, with sheet
Yeah.
masks, fragrances. How has that worked for you?
Really well. In fact, I think that's going to be the one of the growth areas for us in 2021. This is something that consumers had asked us for the longest of time, and we were pretty quiet in saying that do we fit, do we not fit, and all of that. And we decided to literally touch our toes with in the water kind of thing, and tread very carefully by doing a very small test range, so as to speak. Uh, and that's the kind of philosophy that we follow at Chumbak all the time anyway. Start small, experiment, and then grow the hell out of it.
Right.
So beauty is that space which is right now in phase 2, which is like being nurtured to be grown the hell out of. So I think beauty is something that you're going to see a lot more in Chumbak in the coming months.
All right. So we know that what to expect and where to go next when we're taking care of ourselves.
Yeah.
So when we also spoke about funding and you spoke about your initial days with it, Gopa asks how much time should an entrepreneur give to break even? Is it something which is
That's honestly your staying power and the investor staying power. If you're self-funded, you got to figure out, can I give 3 months of my money to it, 6 months of my money to it, or 3 years of my money to it? And that's honestly got to do with your own understanding and your own passion of the product, saying that, hey, I believe that I will lose money for at least a year, but after that I'm going to be making up in profits and revenue. If you're funded, you will lose the money a lot of the time because of the kind of growth that you are on, and because of the growth that you're on, it's got to honestly, it's like a joint decision between the entrepreneur and the board, saying that, hey, we're okay to lose money for about 4 years, example. And but once that's there is a plan to path to profitability in that sense. So there is no time, so as to speak. It depends on the kind of source of money. If it's your own, obviously the time is much shorter. If it's not your own, the time is much longer.
Right. And just to get a sense of when you're seeking out investments, it's somebody else's money that you're putting out at stakes. So I think that also draw back to what you said about your intent being very clear, so that you are clear in your head, and whoever money you're playing with is also sure about where they are investing.
Sure.
Right. I just have one last question. I think we've lost Ayush for the day. So Manjalika asks, what is the advice for entrepreneurs who plan to enter the market with their hand painted or handmade stuff? Coming from Chumbak, which is, I see, a lot more different from directly working with craftsmen. What would your advice be?
I think one is honestly, there are a lot of platforms today that are working with entrepreneurs, which are doing stuff at home, like, the hand painted or handmade, starting out from like, global people like Etsy to, even smaller players, which, work on social commerce like Misho and a whole bunch of other players that are there. And, work with them and then slowly start figuring out. So, if it's that, then slowly start setting up an Instagram shop, which will help you in that sense, and reach out to consumers, slowly start building a base, and from there take it forward. Because one of the big things about that is that since it's handmade or hand painted, there will be a kind of limit of how much product you can produce. So take it slow and try and understand your consumers and the feedback that they have from a design perspective, from a pricing perspective, from a product perspective itself. So start on Instagram, start small, friends and family, and then see the kind of feedback that you get.
Right. I'd also direct this question to Ayush now that we have it. So Manjalika asks the advice for entrepreneurs who are starting out with handmade, handcrafted products. I think also an important aspect of this would be to bringing your vision to the crafts people as well. When you talk about design and sensibilities. So what would your advice be?
So, first thing is include the craftsperson in the design process. They know what they can do and they know what they can do well. Often designers impose what they want and not what happens simply and easily. So include the maker in the process of design, not after the design work is done. That is one thing. Second is be very open about chance and mistakes, because sometimes mistakes teach us a lot. I've learned a lot from the mistakes, and I've actually gained a lot from them also. Also, very often people think that quality is something that is inherent in a product. I believe quality is something inherent in a communication. When we tell a customer that this is what you'll get and this is natural and this is normal, they get it. Explain things to the customer, because sometimes they like the fact that they've got a product which is absolutely unique, which nobody else in the world has. So I think great communication is very, very important for handmade products. And if you need to hire copywriters or have better photographs, I think you should, because handmade deserves it.
Right. On that note, I'd like to thank both of you, Ayush and Vivek, for taking up time and having this conversation with us. Has a lot of takeaways. If I were to quickly put them as a recap, so starting about how vision and values of your brand matters, the differentiation between brand versus product, the intent that with which you're marketing, leveraging digital platforms in the new age, and definitely data. That is the key. That is the takeaway for us from today's call. Thank you so much for coming here. And I'd like to just take a few minutes and share my screen, tell the audience about our upcoming session. So the next one is about legal basics for businesses. I think another very relevant session, especially when the discussions around intellectual property, patenting, all of this is gaining foregrounds. And the other is about a customer experience journey delivered by Gitanjali Rastogi, an expert in this field. Again, all of this will just add on to what we've been speaking today and also in some of the past conversations. Thank you so much. Watch out this space and we'll stay updated. Thank you so much once again. Bye.
Thank you for including us in this trip. So it's been our pleasure. Thank you.